Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, I recently read that DeFi exploits totaled $12 billion last year. And between this fraud spike and the social engineering attack on Robinhood and the recent Google Play scam, I think it's more critical than ever that cybersecurity become an embedded part of cryptocurrency. So I went online to see if I could find an expert to cover this, and I found the perfect guest. Her name is Tammy Kahn, and she's the co-founder and CEO of BTblock. And having performed cybersecurity code reviews for software supporting many blockchain protocols, including the likes of Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and Cardano, Tammy and her team have continuously observed how great an impact security concerns have and are having on widespread adoption. And let's be honest, crypto needs that adoption more than anything right now. So with crypto scams and fraud skyrocketing, or at least dominating our news feeds, I'm quite excited to get Tammy on here to discuss some of the core issues that are plaguing the industry. But I don't want to reveal any spoilers, so buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Boston, Massachusetts, where Tammy Kahn is waiting to speak with us. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Okay, I am Tammy Kahn. I am CEO and co-founder of BTblock. We are an emerging technology consultancy firm that focuses on finding vulnerabilities in things before the bad guys do. And I'm also the co-founder of our spin-out company, which is called FIO, F-Y-E-O, GoFio.com, which has taken all of our learnings from finding all the things before the bad guys. And our mission in 2022 and beyond is to actually help regular people that use cryptocurrency be a heck of a lot more secure.
And we were talking for several minutes before we started recording today about you living in the UK, etc. But I've got to ask, what is your origin story? Where was your passion for technology come from? What lit that spark in you and made you want to use it to go after the bad guys?
The true story. The true story is that I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My grandfather started a company. My father worked there. And so I learned from a very early age that you just do your own thing. So that was a foregone conclusion that it's totally normal to have business conversations at the dinner table and that everyone's involved, even grandma. So that was my background. And shortly after college, my father asked me for some help with some computer stuff. And 4 years later, I was working with him. But I always knew that as much as a family business was fun, there was a different path for me that really was more focused on the technology that can help empower people. So people like me who want to go and do things and run things, how can I make technology better and easier and more accessible for them? So I am one of those recovering entrepreneurs, consistently recovering because I keep doing it. But my face plant into kind of the security is about 4 years ago in 2018, I was fortunate enough to team up with my co-founders for BTblock. And we teamed up because we were all doing some consulting work in the blockchain space on different types of project, really during coming right off of that ICO boom of what the heck is this? And people think it's the Wild West now. It was the Wild West then. And we knew that there was something there, but we also knew that a lot of people were building things that just simply don't make any sense. Like I remember there was a publicly traded company called it was like an iced tea company, and they wound up changing themselves to Long Island Block and for their stock, and it was getting crazy. So we wound up, like most good origin stories, the firm was formed entirely by accident. The group of us were fortunate enough to be asked to give a joint presentation, and in that we said, what if we just form ourselves as a firm for this presentation? And we got so much interest that we realized that we need to figure this out. And so we built BTblock on the premise that life's too short to use things that nobody wants. And then we've expanded that into, and life's too short to get hacked. So it became a natural evolution to really go into the security side, because we really want to be on the forefront of fixing the problem. So when we started, it was, should you be building this like this? And then once we got into it, we're like, okay, you've built it, but is it secure? Because people just think, oh, blockchain, immutable, perfect. And it still could be hacked. You want to make sure that security is at the forefront. That's my origin story.
Oh, brilliant. Absolutely love that. And a few moments ago, you said it perfectly when you said BTblock is a cybersecurity firm that prides itself in finding vulnerabilities before the bad guys do. But can you tell the listeners a little bit more about the kind of problems that you solve and what makes you different from others out there? Because it's such a crowded space, isn't it, the cybersecurity space?
When you say the word cybersecurity, InfoSec, yeah, that's crowded. Yeah. But when you look at when you look at a lot of these cryptocurrency projects, especially the DeFi projects, there's a logic around it. Yeah. And that logic is there's very few people that truly understands it. In fact, when we started, we were approaching every review like an ordinary, penetration test where you just look at the code and you make sure that code in and of itself is good. But with this, there's so many dependencies. There's so many things that are 7 layers away from that you wind up really needing to cultivate expertise around the logic around it. And so for us, we separate ourselves by being, I'm biased, but we're the best at the logic around DeFi. And we also pride ourselves in trying very hard to hand pick our projects. We made a decision a while ago. We don't want to be mercenaries. We don't want to just do whatever is out there. We want to really hand pick the projects that we work on. And so if you go to our blog, you'll see, and we've been very quiet for a very long time, but just end of last year, beginning of this year, we've actually started to even blog about some of the projects that we're working on, because our view is that we need to make cybersecurity more of a table stakes thing. People have to really want it, and it has to get a little sexier for people to really, in the community, really push for it. So we've been fortunate to align with some very interesting projects. And so we differentiate by we try to be a partner. Our head of cybersecurity research, Michael Bjorn, says whenever we're talking to a prospective client, he says, there's lots of firms who will throw a rock, basically go into a cave for 2 weeks, come out, throw a rock through your window, and then tell you that a rock can get through your window. We try to make sure the rock just doesn't go through. We work with people, and for us, it's really a mission of education too. That's why we're not just a consulting firm. We've spent the time to build our own tools, and we're going to be bringing to market our own products in 2022 to try to make cybersecurity accessible, trying to make it not suck. We've all been to one of those in corporate America or corporate world where the poor guy in IT is like, all right, time to do your 1-hour webinar, and everyone just clicks it and nobody really cares. So we are on a bit of a mission to fix that, because it has to be fixed. That it's staggering how scary the world is. I take the point of view of being a lot more positive and say this is an opportunity for all of us to learn and to get better. But it is, when you look statistically at just breaches and hacks and how much money is really lost or at stake, it is real. The flip side is that if we can all figure this out, Web 3.0 it's where we need to go as just a world. It's the natural evolution of our way of interacting with each other.
It really is. I must admit, you gave me flashbacks of those corporate compliance training things, hitting next for an hour and a half and then realise you got 1 point under and have to do it again or something. Man, yep. It just doesn't work. And just to highlight the scale of the problem here, recent reports show that DeFi exploits have totaled $12 billion so far in 2021 alone. And between the fraud spike and social engineering attack, Robinhood, and the recent Google Play scam, for example, it just highlights the importance here. But can you expand on why it's more critical than ever that cybersecurity becomes an embedded part of cryptocurrency?
Well, I think it's a barrier against adoption if we can't get this right, because we're estimating, give or take, about 300 million people around the world own crypto. And if we want to see that grow, and if we want to see it really evolve into what it can be in this Web 3.0 world, we need to get rid of the barrier, which is the trust in crypto. And you hear it on the news, you hear all the bad stuff, you hear, oh, this exploit happened and this person lost all this money, and you hear all of this. So that keeps perpetuating this idea that crypto is really the Wild West and anything goes. But if we can start bringing proper audits, proper reviews, just really think about it like people have physical security. If you have a building or a house, people have alarms. People understand the concept of trying to keep secure. I think what's hard is because of Moore's law and because of how fast things have just been doubling and moving so fast, I think that a lot of people are just, oh, it must be okay. And it's not necessarily okay. It's like having a great alarm system, but if you leave your front door wide open, it's not going to make a difference. That's part of, we think, what the problem is. The other issue is that sometimes you're only as strong as your weakest link. So in companies, you're only as strong as your employees. If somebody clicks on something that's a phishing scam, that goes through the entire company. A lot of companies make the mistake of thinking that just because their internal systems are secure, that's enough, but they forget that their employees interact with third parties all the time. And I mentioned earlier that we have done a spin-out company called FIO, and at the end of 2021, we did a FIO report. And in that, we listed the top passwords because part of our research and part of what we do is we actually have a database of 22 billion leaked credentials and cracked passwords. We're the good guys and we have it. So you can imagine that there's not so good guys that have it. And the top password that most employees use when they're using a third party for their company is the domain name of the company. And why? Because it meets most password criteria for long enough, one special character, it just meets it. And so people have just decided that I should use that. And it's through those things. Robinhood had a social engineering attack recently, but it's through those weakest links of the humans. We're all just human. That a lot of these things can happen.
And obviously that prompts the promotion of password safes and things, but I know they're very difficult to use. And if you do have one, I noticed even LastPass, I think they had an attack a couple of days ago, didn't they? What happens when the gatekeeper gets hacked?
You build something, you build a different gate. It's too early to go prime time, but we're in beta. But GoFio.com, people who want to really be on the forefront of something new, we are using public-private key technology to ensure that identity management becomes just a basic human right. It's free for everyone. We want everyone in the world to use technology that already exists to secure themselves. I'm so tired of reading this grandma got hacked and they want 7 Bitcoins. Like, grandma doesn't know how to do that, right? Grandma doesn't know how to do that. So I just, hopefully this year we'll be able to help push that narrative, especially with great interviews like this, because it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be scary. And sometimes, unfortunately, the only way we learn is that bad things have to happen. But I do think that there's been enough media coverage now of how badly things can go that people are starting to take it more seriously. The issue is most things are not very user-friendly and they don't really have in mind the average person. And especially now that you have a lot more, I would say, regular people coming into crypto because of apps like Coinbase and Robinhood, you really are just dealing with people who maybe are not as technology savvy because they're able to just come on and use this. So it's more critical than ever to help the cryptocurrency community figure out a way to be more secure.
And if we do have anyone like that listening, with crypto scams and fraud skyrocketing for much of the time, what are some of the core issues plaguing the industry that you're seeing at the moment so we can possibly help educate rather than scare?
I asked the wider team this morning because I wanted to make sure I said something intelligent. And the top ones was brute force attacks, credential stuffing, phishing attacks, and rug pulls. And if those words are scary, it's basically people trying to get a hold of your information to get in, or people scamming you to put money into something to then take it. Now, one is more of a social problem, like rug pulls. The other is really more of people are trying to get in. And again, password reuse, big problem. Most people, they'll use the same for their bank too. That's the crazy part. People are using the same 5 passwords for everything. And then their next 5 are variations of the 5 before. But computing power is such that people can run that through an algorithm. They could just spit it off and try them all. And that's just brute force their way in. So,
I mean, we were talking a few moments ago about the old school compliance training and how that doesn't help. What needs to happen, in your opinion, to change this? Is it more than just training?
Yeah, we need solutions that everyone can use, no matter their level of expertise. And I always remember I worked at a company once and there was Tom in IT. I'll always remember him because I always felt so bad for him because his job was to make sure everyone did the right thing. And nobody ever did the right thing. And everyone hated Tom because he was such a pain in the butt, but I felt bad for him. So I think that what's going to need to happen is that people inside of companies and just people in general, but from the company perspective, people inside of companies and the IT have to work together. It has to be, there's something bad out there. No one's in trouble. Let's fix it. Let's stay ahead of it. Let's gamify it. Let's make it something that we're doing together, because you're never going to stop cybercrime. It's just not, just you're never going to stop regular crime. It's going to happen. What you can do is make it more difficult.
And this is going to be a big question, I appreciate it, but what should both users and businesses in this space be on the lookout for this year? Because that's the big one, but you do set yourself up there for getting there before the bad guys. So I've got to ask the question.
Yeah, we try to get there before the bad guys, in the sense that these companies that people are putting their money into or interacting with DeFi platforms, tokens, we're trying to get there before the bad guys, in the sense that we're telling people to patch stuff so bad guys can't get in. So that's one side. That's on the code side. But on just the human side of interacting with things, the code could be perfect. It's almost never perfect, but it can be pretty close to perfect. And you as a user can just be the weakest link, and people can still, if somebody has access to your seed phrase and your password and your key, they can get access and empty your wallet. And because it's blockchain, it's immutable. You're not getting it back. There's no centralized way of getting it back. There's no one you can call. Although some companies like OpenSea, who has had some major issues lately with NFTs disappearing or being burned or stolen, have managed to freeze things. But then that brings up a whole thing in the community of, well, is it really decentralized? I guess you can't win for trying. But I think being very aware that phishing looks like everything else. And it's coming through text messages now. Like, people used to think, oh, it's my phone, it's safe. I got one the other day that said, click, thanks for your Verizon payment, claim your free gift. 99% sure that was phishing. Didn't click it, obviously, deleted it. But anything that looks suspicious, and there's one going around, which is, and this one's really scary. They get into one employee, and then from that employee, they get into, basically, they pretend they're the CFO or somebody. So it looks enough like that. And then they push it out to people in the organization and say, I need you to buy $500 in Amazon gifts for something that we're giving to a client, and just send them here. And literally these little micro scams of $500 at a time. And people are sending Amazon gifts, Amazon cards to, it's crazy. So I think you got to really watch out for phishing, and be extra careful that everything that is related to cryptocurrency is physically printed. That's what has to happen. You have to print it out and put it in a safe. It's a, think of the old safe deposit box mentality. Print it out, put it in a safe, and then delete it off of anything that's electronic. That is the safest way to ensure your cryptocurrency stays safe. And for the love of God, use really difficult passwords.
And don't lose it. I don't know if you've seen about the guy, I think it's in Wales over here in the UK, and he lost 400 million's worth of Bitcoin, and he's been going through the rubbish tips for over a year now, I think. He even offered a reward of something like 50 million for anyone that helps him find it that's working at that rubbish tip. So don't be that guy. Could you imagine going through that?
Yes, don't be that. And there's ways. I hope most people have families. You can have people, I call one of my co-founders, I say, you're my son's crypto godfather. Like, he knows where everything is. He has the back. You work that out the same way you would work out things in the physical world. I think that as a society, we're just going to get better at it, because we are good at preparing, for things. And it's just, I don't know if we've all caught up with really where the technology is, but we're humans. We want the fun part. We don't want any of the work.
And I'm glad you mentioned the fun part there. Another thing that I've seen increasing is QR codes, because we're all scanning everything for QR code for cocktail menus, for just about everything. But there's rogue stickers being put everywhere now, and even QR codes in emails, because the security systems, they're looking for text URLs, etc., whereas the QR code will take them straight to that nefarious place. So
right, and that's scary, and that's a way to misuse it, and that's a very big issue with QR codes. There's going to be good and bad sides to everything, and you're not going to be able to protect against anything. My general thing is, if I don't know, I won't scan any random QR code. I know I better be inside of whatever application that I'm using in order to do it. Or if I'm at my local restaurant and they have a QR code, I'm probably just going to trust them there. But yeah, I think we maybe just help somebody orchestrate an attack. They're going to just go into local restaurants.
Yeah, check there's not a sticker place over the top.
Yeah, make sure it's really on there, or just go back to paper menus. I'm sick of it. When I eat, I don't want my phone out. I get irritated by it.
Oh man, no, you and me both. But so what's next for you? What's your focus going to be at BTblock this year? Is there anything you can share?
We're going to continue to partner with really interesting both layer one protocols and the ecosystems around them. We find that once we get into a layer one that we really like, we want to then support the ecosystem. And sometimes the ecosystem's ecosystem, it becomes, there's a lot of different levels to it. So we're going to continue to grow our team of our best white hat ethical hackers around. We have a lot of fun. So we're gonna keep doing that. And I think what we're really trying to do now, which is new, but I think we'll be able to do it because I think it's important, is to every project that we work on, we're doing our best to try to bring in this FIO concept that I mentioned earlier, which we're calling domain intelligence, where we are actually monitoring the dark web, monitoring for leaked wallet addresses, monitoring for leaked passwords, and also monitoring for any lookalike domains to start to prevent phishing attempts. Because our biggest concern is that phishing attempts are going to start running rampant in these communities. You think about these crypto communities that have hundreds of thousands of people and they're all excited about the token and they're all talking. And then if all of a sudden the CMO's account gets, compromised and they send out to everyone, click this link for an airdrop, oh crap, that's pretty bad. So we're going to try really hard to make 2022 the year where we start to protect the projects. And then hopefully, as we move into kind of the second half, get our password manager out there and just hope that people share it and use it and take this gift that we're trying to give to the world and just make it work better so that we're all safer and there's just less crime. The only thing we can do is if everyone has an alarm, yeah, people will still be able to disable the alarm, but less people are going to be robbed. So I think it's time for us to all as a world start to set our alarms when it comes to our digital identity, especially if we're moving to a really decentralized digital currency model, which early indications are we are.
Yeah, and I suppose nothing like the word airdrop should be enough to set off your tech spidey sensors too.
Oh yes, yes. Be very careful with that.
We've talked a lot about scary topics today, but I'm going to end by having a little bit of fun with you because we began talking about your origin story, but as we've come full circle, I want to ask if there's a song, piece of music, movie, or book that has inspired you or helped you in your career. What would your choice be and why? And we'll add it to one of our lists.
Okay, hands down. I don't even have to think. Nicole Perlroth's recent book, This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends. It sounds very doom and gloom, and part of it is, but this is a woman who has spent years and years as the cybersecurity reporter at the New York Times, has uncovered just amazing stuff. She was one of the journalists that worked when the Snowden stuff all came out. She was locked in a closet dealing with all of this. And she's recently left the New York Times, but this was like her final thing. And you want to talk about somebody who has been there and been in it and seen, and it's going to scare the crud out of you. It's a very scary book, but I think it's really important that people just see the reality and then kind of come back and, okay, let's not all jump off a bridge, but we're going to figure it out. But it just shows how woefully unprepared our governments are, how bad it really has gotten just in terms of just cyber crime and cyber warfare. It's the war you can't see, but it's potentially one of the biggest threats I think we have to our modern society. So I would say that is a great book, and it's from that book. And I look at that and it's very scary and a little sad that I think it motivates me every day to say, because one of her things in her epilogue, she wrote, and I had tweeted her and mentioned that we're working on this, because she said, I just wish we could fix the password. Like the password is the weakest link. So that motivates me a lot.
Wow, man, I tried to get you away from the dark topics we've been talking about. You've pulled me straight in.
I'm usually a very happy person.
But I tell you, honestly, I'm not just going to add that to our Amazon wish list there so people can get hold of that. I'm going to check that out myself. I will be picking that up.
You should tweet. She's pretty active on Twitter. She should know what you're doing because like I said, and I was sad when she moved on from the New York Times but I can understand. You talk about going to battle every day and maybe fighting a losing battle every day. Really hard to see all that truth.
Thank you so much for joining me today. But before I let you go, can you remind listeners of where they can find you online, contact your team if they've got any questions, or learn about anything we've been talking about today? What's the best starting point?
Sure. Our website, we have two. So BTblock and then GoFio, FYEO.com. Brave people sign up for the beta, and then I could be found on Twitter at Tammy Kahn, and that's KAHN, like the hot dogs. And I'm not from the hot dog fortune, but it usually helps.
Awesome. I'll add those links to the show notes so people can find you nice and easy. Love chatting with you today. We've covered so many important topics, but I think as a tribute to Tom, I think maybe we should dedicate today's interview to Tom. And
Tom and IT. I gotta see if I still have him on my LinkedIn. I'm gonna send this to him. Poor Tom.
So Tom, this one's for you. But
thank you for you, Tom.
Thanks so much for joining me today, Tammy.
Take care.
Tammy was just so much fun today. And after we finished recording, we were laughing for a good 5 minutes about me asking to end the podcast on a light-hearted note, and she recommended This Is How They Told Me the World Ends. After that conversation, I started the book, and let me tell you, she was bang on the money. And a must read or listen, depending whether you're a physical book, digital book, or audio book listener. Check it out. Highly recommended. Now, I will be staying in touch with Tammy, and I also want to stay in touch and connect with each and every one of you listening. So pop by my website, techblogwriter.co.uk. There's nearly 2,000 interviews there. You can connect with me on social, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes. Or my email address is techblogwriter@outlook.com. Tell me where you listen to the show, how long you've been listening, and if you enjoy your stay, why not leave a review and send me a screenshot, and I'll give you a shout out on here too. But I'll return tomorrow with another guest, but it's time for me to go now. So thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.